Welcome, I am your host, Asar Imhotep, with the Madhu Mandela Institute for the Advancement of Culture and Science. Today, we have a special guest with us for our intimate talks with scholars from around the world. We have with us Dr. Kipkoeech Sambu, who is the author of numerous books on the Kalenjiin people of Eastern Africa. To name one is The Missouri Legend Explored, a linguistic inquiry into the Kalenjiin people's oral tradition of ancient Egyptian origin, and the Kalenjiin people's Egypt origin, Legend Revisited, was Isis. I'd like to welcome Dr. Kipkoeech Sambu. Thank you for joining us here today. And how are you doing this evening?
Fine, Asar Imhotep, pleased to meet you. It's been long since we wrote to each other, and we kept writing, but we never met. But we are now meeting face to face, thanks to this technology.
Yes. So just a little background. I came across your work actually through a radio interview, and you were speaking on Ma'at. And from there, I went and got a hold of your first book, The Kalenjiin People's Egypt Origin, and then after that, I went and got the second book. But for the people who do not know you, please give us a little bit of background of who you are, where you're from, who the Kalenjiin people are, and how you got into the study of a more systematic study of your own people, the Kalenjiin.
Thank you very much. My name is, as you have mentioned there, Kipkoeech Arab Sambu. I come from Kenya, East Africa, and my immediate people are called the Kalenjiin, as you have mentioned there. They are part of East Africa. About 8 million of them are in Kenya. That's the biggest branch of them. We have others in Uganda, the Sabine area. We have others in Tanzania, yet others in Ethiopia, Western Ethiopia, and Southern Sudan. So I don't know how many millions there are, but it's a large group of people. These are the immediate Kalenjiin. And then there are other Nilotic peoples. They are an East African phenomenon. They're not few. That's where I come from. I went to school in Kenya for the lower grades up to university, first degree. Did another degree via a London institution, certified Chartered Institute of Purchasing and Supply. After that, I did my doctorate in South Africa when I changed my interest and went to Egyptology. So I studied Coptic in the Coptic Center in Nairobi, and then transferred on to the University of South Africa and completed my doctorate in South Africa, after which I went to Germany to do the postdoctoral practicals. And precisely that's what I have done formally in education. The rest of the time I've been reading. And my interest in this field came long after I was through with my first degree and the second diploma. In 1990, that's when I turned to Egyptology, when I went to a library and discovered just one word in Coptic. I read a Coptic book there, something, just accidentally, and it said the Coptic word for the hand or the hand is tigig. But in Kalenjin, tigig is here. So I followed that up, and it was very interesting from there on. More and more discoveries, and then I decided to study Coptic officially. I did that for 3 years at the Coptic Center in Nairobi before transferring on to the University of Nairobi, of South Africa, to complete the doctorate.
So with that first word for hand, you basically, what you're saying is that you read a word from the Coptic language and it matched a word for hand in your language. And then this prompted you to study more deeply the ancient Egyptian language and culture. And you started to find, if I'm correct, you started to find more and more correspondences. And this is how your work developed.
Yes, yes. I must tell you first initially that uh, the Kalenjin people have this history, and they must tell all kids must be brought up knowing that they originated from Misri, that is the ancient name for Egypt, or another name, To. So you came from To, they are told. So we are told all these, I was told that too. But this coincidence, I mean, when I read this thing, by happenstance, this name, this word, Tigig, then I decided, why don't I check more on this and prove this tradition, oral tradition, whether it's true or not. I had seen this first time, a small proof though at that time, and then I decided to go deep into it.
Well, I have in my hand, as I mentioned earlier, after I heard you speaking on Ma'at, I hurried up and got this book. And I can say that it is, as a person who studies ancient Egypt in relationship to modern Africa, this has been one of the better books that I've read because it ties to a living culture. And it is something that is it is rarely done, especially in the English-speaking world. In the French-speaking world, they do a lot of linguistic correspondences and things of that nature, but never a full-out comparison of the modern culture to the ancient. And so I really appreciated this work. But for the audience who does not know about this work, can you please tell them, what it's about, what is in it, and what inspired you to detail this this work in such a way that you did?
The book you're holding up there is that's my first book. It compares ancient Egyptian religion with the Kalenjin religion. I'm using a discipline called comparative religion, where you compare religions. So I compare that religion with the Kalenjin traditional religion, as well as other religions worldwide, and to see the similarities. The biggest similarity, of course, you can see is Isis, and compared to the Kalenjin name for God, and the Kalenjin God is goddess, Isis. So to compare Isis of Egypt, who was also goddess, and the goddess of the Kalenjin, who is the sole goddess, Isis. Compare those, compare other names for God, like Ta. I think you have seen Ta. Probably you pronounce it Pita. It's Ta. It's a very difficult word to pronounce for someone who is not familiar with the Kalenjin type of languages. They're called, I call them somewhere Hamitic, and I hope we'll explain why we call them Hamitic, Nilo-Hamitic. They have words beginning with a P and T, P and K. So this is Ta. I compare Ta with, or at least even use the word Ta, which is a name we gave to Jesus when missionaries came from America and Europe to try and evangelize amongst us, and they taught us this religion, which we thought was a foreign religion, that's Christianity. And they asked us, that is almost 2 centuries ago, from the 1900s, 1 century, 14 years perhaps ago. They asked the Kalenjin, okay, there's this savior. There's somebody who came as a savior and he has saved you. What is the best name we can give to this savior? So the Kalenjin offered Ptah. So Jesus is called Ptah. And Asar, I'm sure you know Ptah of ancient Egypt. Actually, his full name was Kiptah. So Jesus was called Kiptah, yeah, among the Kalenjin, and the Egyptians, ancient Egyptians called their one of their gods, one of the principal quote-unquote gods, Kiptaios, the one that gave the name to Egypt. And is better known or more known to Egyptology as Ptah. And exactly, Jesus Christ, among the Kalenjin, is called Kiptai or Ptah, Ptah. So I compared that. Then, of course, we had Ra. Interesting. I compare Ra, the ancient Egyptian quote-unquote sun god, with the Kalenjin Ra. Ra in Kalenjin is today, as occasioned by the sun. So the sun was Ra. Today, to say the word today is Ra-ini, this sun. Today is this sun. And then I compare that. But of course, all this minding the fact that the Kalenjin were really monotheistic, and all God could only be Assis. All these were just manifestations of Assis. The sun, because you see the sun in Kalenjin is a sister, it's the same word as Assis. That is the sun. Assis is God, goddess. The sun is a sister. But I mean the same thing. Then we had Maat to compare, field day comparing Kalenjin Maat with the ancient Egyptian Maat, finding out that it's the same thing. We had Ammon, and then most of the deities of ancient Egypt manifesting themselves as words in Kalenjin, just living words, just words, but no longer referring to God, but within the same context.
Do you think that you just mentioned that the terms may not be related to quote unquote specific deities? Do you think that back in the pharaonic times that it may not have really been deified in that way, that they were just really the common terms, but this is just the way that they talk? You know, how would you categorize or explain the nature of the ancient Egyptian mythological methodology of teaching certain principles and concepts in nature?
Probably they wanted to make it easier for the lay to understand. And if you wanted to teach people morality and other rules of nature, other rules of morality and behavior, probably they decided to bring them down under a god or goddess for you to perhaps respect, to generate more respect for them. But certainly they knew that they were just, these were just concepts embodied in quote-unquote gods. Like, well, the biggest one, of course, that you know is Maat. So they created this nice, beautiful goddess and said she represented the virtue, good virtue, good morals, ethics. But the Kalenjin do not think of that as God, but the Maat system of the Kalenjin forces you to behave as if you were taught those tenets of ancient Egyptian Maat. So for instance, if you have a relative you call each other Maat with, because you have, perhaps you descend from a common ancestor, male ancestor, then you are obliged, you are obligated to do certain things. You are responsible, you have a responsibility towards that person, his or her welfare, as if this was your own brother, and you're obligated, you don't decide, you're obligated, or else you break a moral standard that all your relatives, via a certain way of reckoning, are yours, are your brothers. So anybody you call Maat is your brother, and you must treat them as your brother. And should one of them be in a And a sorry situation like losing something or going to die or something, you must take steps to make sure that doesn't befall them as you see. So you take responsibility. People have lost lives trying to save somebody they call Mat rather than break a Mat rule. The soldiers, when you were a soldier, this was our community was a martial community from the beginning. So they went out, soldiers fighting, and you were divided into 4 sections. Each of the 4, you call them mat. Within each group of 4, every group had people who were related in a way, and they were calling each other mats. And so, if one of you falls in the battlefield, you're obligated to bring back his property if you could get, especially his shield, which had the marks of your mat. You brought that shield back, or brought him dying if he was dying or almost dying, try to save him. You fight to get him back home. And some people lost lives trying to save their mat man in the field. Somebody who had fallen, you still want to get some of the implements, some of his equipment, some of his tools of war, and you died trying to do that. You can see how strong this thing was. There's so many other mat arrangements where, for the reason that you are obligated to follow something, to obey certain rules and standards, you are calling each other mat. And mat is a very, very strong word.
Now, you mentioned, well, after reading the text, it is clear that there's many dimensions or layers to this concept of mat. And one of them, you slightly hinted on it, but I want you to explain a little bit more. You talk about mat being a kind of a relay torch for a patrilineal, for a patrilineage. And so could you explain a little bit more of that aspect of mat, because that is something that isn't really discussed much in the Egyptological literature, if at all, in terms of connection through family lines and reincarnation?
Reincarnation, yes. Mat literally means the torch. Remember the old torch? People used to light an old torch, or they have something here that looks like one. An old torch you lit before the lamps, before the real torches came, and other nice torches of these days. People used to light some material that looked like this, and you carried a torch in order to be able to see where you are going. Those are the days. So this mat also means fire. This is the torch you must hand over to your successors, by your sons, and your sons must hand over to their sons in turn, and daughters too. So that's mat. You hand over your mat, torch. One thing, the worst thing that can happen to a man is for a mat torch to die on him before you hand over. That means if you don't beget a child, a son, and hand over, you can beget daughters. They are of your mat, but they cannot pass on mat themselves. The next generation, they will pass on the mat of their husbands, not yours, unless you did something. There is something they did to convert a girl into a boy, so that she was able to pass the mat forward. So mat was very important. It had to be passed forward. She was converted into a boy, and any children she gave birth to were of your mat, and therefore it was counted that she had passed on the torch. So that's the torch of mat. And you don't die among the Kalenjiin. You don't die. When you die, you reincarnate. You reincarnate as you can reincarnate as your own grandson, or as your own great-grandson, So we believed in reincarnation. I am a reincarnation of my great-grandfather. So we believe you don't die, you reincarnate. And if you are such a virtuous person, this is a marked lesson. If you are such a virtuous person during your life, when you died, you reincarnated so quickly, people, the next child born around there would answer to your name, and many others within your lineage, the people within your lineage, would all, soon after your death, give birth to babies whom they would think was you. So you reincarnated, as somebody. So that is exactly what mad is. You reincarnate. Reincarnation, I suspect, is a word related to us. Karna is name. Your name is brought back. Bring your karna. Karna is name in Kalenjiin, ancient Egyptian. So I believe the word incarnation, I suspect, must have something to do with our ancient people.
So I appreciate that. Well, you mentioned ISIS earlier, and briefly mentioned a connection with ISIS. Can you explain a little bit more about the connection you made in your book between ancient Egyptian Isis or Aset and Isis, and who is she? What are her characteristics? Things along those lines.
Isis, on the basis, simple basis of phonetics, Isis and Isis, some people pronounce Isis, Asis, Asis. I suspected they were the same word. And then there's this goddess, Isis goddess, and her attributes and names, like the name Kemet, is the same name we have among Kalenjiin, some Kalenjiin groups, all of them called Isis Kemet, Tibet, the girl of the sky, of the heavens, Tibet, or the girl of the day, which is occasioned by the sun. So Isis Kemet, because Isis is still the sun. So our Isis, the Kalenjiin Isis, is thought of as a woman, not necessarily a woman, Mrs. or Miss so and so, but just what they call to enable you to talk and discuss. You give God a form, a human form, but really the ancients say God has no form, but they liked to think of God in feminine terms, so that even today, if someone were found to be so sick in the middle of the night or late at night, and they just hope he or she will be there tomorrow, alive, they say we leave everything in the laps of woman. That is God. So let's leave laps of woman. We leave it to God. So Isis, I said that we leave it to goddess, Isis. And in Kalenjin, since names go, you can know by the name that this is a woman, or this is feminine, or this is masculine. So it's all feminine. Anything to do with God is feminine. And in Kalenjin and other related languages like Maasai, Turkana, those are the other analytic languages more closely related to Kalenjin. The grammar itself, if you're describing a lady, the grammar just betrays it. You can say, as she comes, as she goes, then you know you're talking about, like in Kimasai, God is Enkai. The En, Enkai, alone tells you That's a lady. So there was this. So I related in terms of gender that this was Assis, as Assis of Egypt in gender terms. They are all women. But then I realized when I studied more deeply later that all the ancient Egyptian gods and goddesses coalesced under Assis, and they were the same. These are the supposed gods of Egypt. Excuse me about the lighting. These are the supposed gods and goddesses of Egypt were all manifestations of one Assis. Or if it is Ra, maybe they are all manifestations of Ra, or Ta, or whatever. But according to me, Assis was greater than all of them, and they were all manifestations of Assis, because the ancient Egyptian, just as the Kalenjiin, still practice God, the creator ought to be thought of in terms of woman. My people once told me, the old people that I interviewed, they told me, we conceived God in feminine terms because women are associated with creativity, creating things, making things, but men are associated with destruction. So we don't want to give the maker that the destructive attribute, but let's give them the creator attribute, which is monopolized by women on earth.
That reminds me of in Central Africa, for instance, among the Bakongo. One of the primary names for the divine is Nzambi, but we spoke earlier about Kulunga. And Kulunga, may seem like a separate deity, but it's really just a title and aspect of Nzambi. And so this is an aspect, because Kalunga can also mean to complete. And so Kalunga is a completely complete being, But then, Kalunga is also the ocean. And so it now the Bantu languages doesn't distinguish gender like Kalenjin does, or the ancient Egyptian. But, there is many different titles that certain dialects will, I guess, propped up more or utilized more than another, region or dialect. And, from an outsider looking in, it may look like they have a whole bunch of deities, but amongst them, they understand them as just different aspects of the one. And so this seems to be, in many respects, a kind of a Pan-African characteristic. Which, could be used to help explain, the ancient Egyptian phenomena. But moving forward, I want to hop to your second book in my possession. It is the Missouri Legend Explored, a linguistic inquiry into the Kalenjin people's oral tradition of ancient Egyptian origin. And so you mentioned earlier about the Coptic, word, which kind of, spawned this journey for you. And this text here it seems like the first part is explaining the oral tradition and the journey, and then the second half is dedicated to a linguistic analysis. Can you tell us a little bit more about, this text and what you discovered as a result of, this research in regards to the language, a more systematized language study?
Okay, that's my second book. It compares the ancient Egyptian language or language stages with the Kalenjin language, the living form of the same language, really speaking. So the way I introduce who the Kalenjin are, and then what language they speak, and then I analyze that language vis-a-vis the ancient Egyptian language in terms of, I compare aspects in this linguistics, deep linguistics, so that there are standards that we follow if you are comparing two languages. So one standard is the grammar. is the word order the same? Like father has come home in Kalenjin would be probably has come home father. So it's verb first language, which is the characteristic shared with ancient Egyptian. Verb first language. It's called VSO or VOS, verb subject object language. So when you are giving a report, you first mention that what happened, and then mention who did it afterwards. So to say father has come home, as I told you, is, I mean, that's an example. You just say has come home father, or has come father home. That's a unique attribute of ancient Egyptian and Kalenjin and some North African languages you call Nilo-Saharan. Most of the languages begin with the subject. So that's one thing to compare. Word order. Another one, you compare vocabulary. And the vocabulary you compare has to be the basic vocabulary. The basic vocabulary, these are words that are very hard to lose. You learn as a child, as a baby, and it's very hard to substitute with foreign words as you learn other languages. It's very hard to substitute those words, like, let's say, stomach, mouth, head, eyes. So these other languages cannot interfere with that. Those are so basic. So I compare the basic words like mouth, eye, nose, head, stomach, legs, run, mountain, sky, sun, big things that people don't easily change. Stomach, a hand, those are the words you compare. So there's a list of 100 words which have been set by linguists for that purpose. So you collect those words, take those 100 words, and get them in Kalenjin and in ancient Egyptian, compare them. So that's what I do in one part of my book, and a principal part of it, the grammar, that is the word order especially, and the vocabulary, using the basic words of language. Well, these are standards set by linguists, I mean the discipline of linguistics. And if you are doing that, you must follow those. Then other ways to compare language is perhaps by classes of words. You compare classes of words. Context, like what now? If you are in the sphere of God, discussing gods, God, what are the words you use? If you are discussing the context of mountains, what are the words? The context of rain, what are the words? So in contextual terms, I forgot the real term that we use in linguistics. It will come as we talk.
All right. One second. All right. Now, have you taken a systematic look at the actual script and done any studies on the script itself in terms of its logic, it's the thought patterns, and that probably went into the development of the script as it, as a tool to communicate the ancient language?
That is one thing I wish to be able to do in future, to be able to help Egyptology as a discipline by analyzing Kalenjin and other Nilo-Saharan languages, and any other African language which may be of assistance, and work backwards to recreate, to bring back to life the ancient Egyptian language. As you know, Asar, as of now, we are not able to pronounce, to write phonologically the ancient Egyptian words. We write in without the vowels, so we write the consonants, and people just guess what might have been in between as vowels. We should be able to use these other languages, living languages, which are related to ancient Egyptian, to reconstruct ancient Egyptian and what may be missing, those missing vowels. I don't believe they are missing, but we are missing something. Somebody from the south one day will fill in what is missing and actually read ancient Egyptian the correct way. There are so many letters, ancient Egyptian letters, that need to be understood. Some of them had vowels inbuilt, and people don't recognize those vowels. So it's us who are now mastering these southern languages, living languages, and ancient Egyptian. It's our duty to connect that. Someday, I hope to have some time, or some of my successors hope they will have some time and ability to translate, to reconstruct that.
Yeah, that'll be a good, a worthwhile project. And, you know, I deal with linguistics as well. And so I'm always in communication with linguists from the continent who are engaged in this comparative work as well. And so what is becoming the consensus is that more than likely the ancient Egyptian scripts were syllabic. And just as you said, it had the certain vowels, you know, attached to the initial consonant. And, you know, the latest work, you know, one of the earliest work, of course, was by Dr. Theophilo Wabinga. But there's a later work by Jean-Claude Mboli out of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And he has done, you know, a fantabulous job of, you know, comparing the ancient Egyptian with the, you know, with several different African languages and reconstructing the vowels. And so one of the things he points out, though, which is why I'm bringing him up, is that some of the glyphs, we know, as you said, they only wrote the consonants, or allegedly they only wrote the consonants. But there's certain words, well, we know that there's several, you know, biliterals, you know, triliterals and monoliterals. But some words are never written with other glyphs that have the same exact consonant cluster. And so this would indicate that more than likely these, you know, different glyphs, although they had the same consonants, had different vowels, you know, attached in it. And it'll be great if, you know, we can really get a hold of that. And one of the things that he brought about in his research, which may be a little controversial for some, is that the Coptic language is actually a separate language from Middle Egyptian, and meaning that there are two related languages with two branches. And it would make sense given, and I'm leading to this next question, because when I analyze the Kalenjiin language, to me it's more closer to Coptic than it is to Middle Egyptian. And in your text, you mentioned, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, I would just say toe, but it seems like it's two T's when you spell it. So I don't know if it's toe, if I'm, you know, if it's kind of run together. We don't have that in English, but you know, we would say Jedu is in terms of the town. But it seems like those languages that were closely related to Coptic was closer to the Delta, which is where, you know, toe was, and where you argue in the book that the Kalenjiin people were from. And so, can you explain a little bit more about this area and what the actual oral tradition says? In terms of or what you've been able to trace in terms of probably when you left. What was the route? Specifically for the college and to get to the place where they are now.
Okay, to. That's how you pronounce it, to.
Yeah.
So it's not to, it's to. When you have the double T, it's to. I know in Egyptian, ancient Egyptian, it's written DDO, or do, or to. Both to and to, do are available. I mean, as we have seen it in ancient Egyptian writings. So this place is at where the Nile meets the Mediterranean Sea, that delta area. This is the area that was the place of the people called Sabine. And Sabine, as recorded by Herodotus 400 years before Jesus, that's where, I was saying, they were in Tau, the same place, is the same place that the Sabine lived in. And the Kalenjiin are the Sabine, Sabeni, or Sabei, or Sabine. That is the original name of the Kalenjiin, and we still have them, those who are called Sabine in Uganda and on Mount Elgon of Kenya, mostly on the Uganda side, the Kalenjiin of Uganda, Sabine. They carry that name, and all Kalenjiin people know that they were Sabine before they became these other little new branches. So, as mentioned by Herodotus, these people were at that area, and they were a military clan, which is how the Kalenjiin have behaved until, actually they behaved until the colonial intervention in last century or so. Their military organizations were disbanded, but everybody was born a military person. You knew exactly when you were old enough which parade line you would take. There were 4 files. So which file you will take, you belong to. That's your math group. So we knew you were all born into the military. And even now, I'm born into a military organization, a group, which is not practical anymore, but I'm theoretically a member of a file, a parade, a file. So that was the Do area. So these people say they followed the river down, up the river, that is, they followed up the Nile source and came up to Blue Nile, and probably they branched towards the Ethiopian side, where they stayed for a while. And we still have a lot of people, our own people in Ethiopia. Where they say they passed, we still have our own people until today, except those, we can't identify those north of, let's say, Khartoum, because they have been Arabized and a bit distant. They have a bit distanced themselves from other Africans. But as you come south, you find people who still speak languages like ours and observe our cultures. As you go towards Ethiopia and down the White Nile to Uganda, then of course I told you we have our own people in Uganda, and we have people came to Mount Kenya and to the present, later to the present Kalenjiin area abode west of Kenya. So this is how we tell this, how we relate to that. And our language compares very well with the ancient Egyptian language as it compares to other later forms of the language up to Coptic. And Mbole, I don't know Mbole, what he saw that makes Coptic different from ancient Egyptian, but I've studied both Coptic and ancient Egyptian and Kalenjin, and it's the same language, same stage. There are different stages of the same language.
Yeah. Hold on. Yeah, as far as the linguistic analysis, it's very complicated, and one would have to be very familiar with phonology, sound change, and how the accent on syllables change, the vowel structure and things of this nature. And so there's certain ways that we can tell by the way the Middle Egyptian language is structured that certain that it was just different. And for instance, like with the Kalenjiin, it has diphthongs. Diphthongs has a way that affects how the vowels are pronounced and what certain consonants are dropped as a result of it. And so you see the same behavior in languages like Kalenjiin and like Coptic, but you don't see this in Middle Egyptian and Old Egyptian, which would be expected given.
It's because more ancient Egyptian, Middle Egyptian, and other other stages of ancient Egyptian, we have not recognized the vowels yet. To be able to take into account the behavior of diphthongs, you have to recognize the vowels, because diphthongs are about vowels. We don't know, we cannot really analyze vowels beyond Coptic as far as the older stages of ancient Egyptian are concerned. Beyond Coptic, we cannot analyze the diphthongs because the vowels, we are yet to master the vowels. When we master the vowels, we will know, because the vowels, as I told you, are hidden within certain consonants, which we are yet to disengage and recognize them for part vowel, part consonant. So when we analyze that, we'll be able to know how they treated their diphthongs. But diphthongs are a very interesting aspect of the Kalenjiin language and the Coptic language. Like in ancient Egyptian, let me use an example which has diphthongs, interesting development of within the diphthongal area. Take, for instance, oil.
Oil.
Oil, yeah, oil like O-I-L.
Okay.
In English, Kalenjin is muaita. Muai, that is a diphthongal sound. But in ancient Egyptian, instead of saying muai, ta, muai, they would say muar. So where there is a diphthongal sound, they replace with a, muar. We still have that with one of our northern languages, Kalenjin languages, dialects called Marakwet. So Marakwet probably cannot, actually they don't say muai like we in the south say muai. They say muar, which is exactly the same way ancient Egyptians would put it, muar. So the diphthong suffers at the expense, R comes in at the expense of the diphthongal sound. Kerio is a valley, that in Kalenjin. Kerio, in ancient Egyptian, that was Kerio. But you find the north, they say Kerio. As you come south, they say Keio. So the diphthong interchanges with R. And as you come south, the diphthong takes over and the R is lost. There's that funny relationship between R and a diphthongal situation, comparing the ancient Egyptian Coptic and Kalenjin language. That's difficult to explain, but I hope you understood.
Yeah, I understood, and I think you. Matter of fact, I know you mentioned it in your text in terms of the interchange, like what we see in the Egyptian records between the R and the I sound, which is given by the reed leaf in terms of the Y or R. The Y. Some transcribe it as Y, and some transcribe it as I. The Germans transcribe it as J. but basically, you know, saying that same sound.
And J is read like a strong Y, ja, like ya, yes, it's J-A, ja. Like your name, Imhotep, your Imhotep, comma in peace.
Mm.
It can be in Kalenjin, Jo Imhotep or your Imhotep. So Y and J also interchanged in Kalenjin vis-a-vis ancient Egyptian.
It's the same thing in Chiluba as well. Now, you mentioned the military clan, and there are some correspondences that you associated with the Egyptian and the current Kalenjin military, you know, structure. Can you explain a little bit more about that, you know, to the audience in terms of those correspondences between, you know, what we find in ancient Egyptian, the way that they set up their military, and how, you know, you found these correspondences among the modern Kalenjin?
Okay, as I told you at the beginning of the talk, my next book, which you have asked me, which you are going to ask me, I know, we'll deal with that. But let me explain than before. The Kalenjin, when they went to war, they went to war in 4 files. They marched in 4 files. The ancient Egyptian army also marched in 4 files. The ancient Egyptian, if I can remember the 4 files, one was, I think, one was Ra, one was Ta. I don't remember whether there was a Sir, but there were 4 files. And Set. Even Set had a file. Remember Set, the dog god of ancient Egypt? Seset. Seset means god, it means dog in Kalenjin up to now. So they had 4. One of them was Ta. Okay, and when they went to war, okay, reaching the battlefield, maybe they would break up or go into one file, or depending on the situation there. But at the marching level, or even when they were doing parade, performing for the king, they would march in 4 files. The Kalenjin people still march, or until the colonial government broke our military setup, we marched in 4 files. And you are born into a file, just like in Egypt. When you're born a baby, you're born into your father's military file. When you finally get encrypted, what do you call, become part of the army, you went and you were taken into your father's former military file, and you marched using the way he marched. This file, this file, this. So we have phonemes. Phonemes, Kipkoeech, Ngetunyo, Kebeni, Kasanet. I belong to the Kasanet. Theoretical. I've never marched anywhere as a military formation, in a military formation anywhere, but theoretically, if there was a match, I mean, the match for some reason, I would just fall in a file called Kasanet. Somebody else will fall in one of the other 3 left. So this was a military clan that you are born into it. And of course, the behavior, once they were in East Africa, history has it, the history books, Asar will tell you it's not nice, it's not praiseworthy what they did, but they tried to spread their hegemony all over. And because of their very good training militarily, they loaded over the rest of the people. It's not praiseworthy, as I say, but that was the truth. It's because of that military formation and the discipline, the way you are disciplined and taught and conditioned not to fear. I mean, to show fear was shameful. So you fought against any natural tendency to fear. He ended up being a good military material. That's why we call the military clan of Pharaoh. And Herodotus, 400 years before Jesus, lists the Sabaeans as one of the military clans of Pharaoh. Another one is another Kalenjin branch in Tanzania called Barabaik. That one was also accounted for by Herodotus 400 years before Jesus. And they were also living there. And they are still military clan. And of course, colonial government made sure this did not continue. But theoretically, we have the formations.
All right. We mentioned it earlier, but now it's the official question. And so in your second text in the Ziri Legend Explored, okay, let me back up a little bit. The tendency within the African school of history and Egyptology is to fight against the Hamitic theory. But you in this text seem to embrace not necessarily the theory that the Hamites came out of, Asia and then, came into Egypt and built Egypt, but we should embrace the title itself because it's relatable to something tangible, in Africa. Can you explain, what you meant, in that chapter on the Hamitic theory?
Hamitic, it's a word that has been abused. It was abused by early European explorers who came and decided anybody who seemed to be in control in East Africa must have come from elsewhere, must have come from the north, and must be superior to the aborigines of the area. So they abused that term. It wasn't right. Modern scholars, even Africans themselves, African scholars, are also trying to abuse the same term by connecting it to those early European explorers and trying to read the meaning that they used and therefore abuse the whole thing. So in my interpretation, my understanding of it, I don't subscribe to either the European one or the African one. I subscribe to what I think is true there. First of all, the African, the Egyptian came from inside Africa, western parts of Africa, central parts of Africa, eastern parts of Africa. As people still move up and south, it used to happen like that. But the Egyptians themselves defined themselves as people from south, that they came from the lake region of Africa or the highlands of Africa. They didn't come from the north, from the sea or other continents. They came from hinterland, inside Africa. So Hamite is not a stranger. It's not Asian. Hamite is an African phenomenon. And we use that even today. Hamite is the same word as Emet. People of the country. Emet is country. In Kalenjiin, in ancient Egyptian, probably you know it as Kemet. And in Coptic, Hemet. So you can see where Hamite came from. People of Hemet, I don't subscribe to the Noah theory that that Ham was the son of Noah, and Noah drank, and when he was in his drunken stupor, he slept uncovered, and these boys, so the good boys came and covered him without laughing at him, but Ham laughed his way all over, and therefore the old man, in his dead sleep, where when he couldn't cover himself, he was so drunk he couldn't cover himself, woke up and knew that Ham did not help cover him. The others covered his nakedness. Whatever that nakedness, I don't think it's literal the way people put it. But Ham, I don't take my Ham from that. And it can't be said that Ham was the father of all Africans. And, you know, Noah's story is supposed to, tries to explain the whole creation of the world. And it's so narrow, it can't account for Australian Aborigines, it can't account for far of Asians, it can't account for American continent of that time, that all this land was submerged after the deluge. So you can't, that is really nursery school, or because of kindergarten, nursery schools, a baby class kind of teaching. I don't believe in that. And in any case, I hear Noah, in his unjustified curse, cursed the son of Ham, so someone called Canaan, who are they are not Africans, they are in the north up there nowadays. So I don't subscribe to that. So my Ham simply relates to Hemet, Kemet. So you can see Kemet in ancient Egyptian, okay, you can see the letter when you read the hieroglyphic. Kemet with that kind of K, but it can also have the Chi, special K letter Chi, which is in Coptic, E-M-E-T, Kemet, or H, which is letter Hori, you know, Coptic Hori, Hemet. So Hemet and Kemet, so K and Hori can exchange. The Ho, He can exchange, and with Ke, Kemet, Hemet. So that is how Hamite is. And somebody came and scandalized it later. I don't want to buy that later adulteration of the word. I want to keep it original and stay true to our language, either present or ancient.
My last question is regarding any upcoming works. And so your first book was released 2007. The second one was 2011. And, you know, people like me are, you know, hungry for more information. And, you know, we're just hoping that you know, have something else in the works. And if you do, you know, can you tell us a little bit about, you know, what is in the works, and when do you, if you have something in the works, when do you plan to release it?
Indeed, I do have something in the works, and I've already alluded to it. It might be titled The Military Clan of Pharaoh. So I'll discuss that Sabine clan, how it came to where we are now, how it split, and how it behaved militarily, what it did while it was still practicing the hegemony that is associated with it in pre-colonial era. Still proving that this was a military clan, and still proving their quote-unquote myth that they came from Egypt. Of course, I've told you that coming from Egypt also implies going to Egypt. It's to and fro. It's not like they came from an Egypt where they were created on the spot. They've been going to and fro, up and down River Nile and other parts of towards West Africa, Eastern Africa, like that. So that book is going to deal with that in detail, and the culture of the ancient Egyptians and the culture of the Kalenjiin compared. It's going to be a busy book, but it's about basically polishing it as we speak.
All right. Is there any anticipated release date?
If I were to go by anticipation, I've anticipated since 2012 2013, I think I've been anticipating to release, but every time something new comes and I think, let me just add this one, let me change this, let me do that. But I hope if you guys encourage and challenge me, I want 2015 to be the year.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I've been working on this book on Ra since 2013. And, I don't see it until me being done, hopefully the fall of next year.
Good to see that you're doing that. Good to see that I'm encouraging you. Please do it. And you're going to discuss Ra as religion, ancient Egyptian religion maybe. That is Ra, God. We still have the word Ra, representing the day. Ra in this God or this day. Yes. We'll look forward to Ra.
Well, I do have this one question. Well, you just mentioned that, they've been going back and forth, all throughout ancient Egyptian history. And so do you have like an estimated time around when the Kalenjiin began to leave, I guess in large numbers from Egypt into their present spots? Or were the people who are in their current locations more so people who left like during pharaonic times and kind of settled there, and like there was some people who still stayed and just kind of blended in with the current society that's there? How do you explain that bit of history?
The to and fro is natural. Africans are still moving up and down, and the ancient Egyptians themselves said they came from Netoror, the higher land in Africa. So first of all, we have it in writing, their own writing. So we don't challenge that. So they went from, the people would go from hinterland Africa up north there or to any other part. So that is written. And then coming south, as far as Kalenjiin are concerned, it wouldn't make sense, it wouldn't be special if there is to and fro. So how do you say you came from Egypt? If it was a to and fro thing, continuous, but it's in the culture of the Kalenjiin. They always say that when the colonialists came, the first thing they told the colonialists was, we came from Misri. So, and those ones wrote also. So this tradition of coming from Egypt has been there all along. And they brought with them Greek words. That now begins telling you these people came, or a huge bunch of them came after the Greeks had become influential enough to transfer some of their words into the ancient Egyptian language. Although I don't see some of those words in the ancient Egyptian language, but I see in Kalenjin Greek words. So it shows you probably they came after the Greeks were influential enough, which is from, say, 6th century BC to 4th, 3rd century BC, when they actually took over the place completely, wrenching Egypt from the Persians. So it appears, I would take it that they came, some of them, a huge bunch of them, an influential bunch, came in recent times, like 4th century or 3rd BC. Now, they brought some religion which is not Christianity. If they had stayed longer, they would have brought with them some kind of Christianity, because Egypt became Christian from around, actually virtually 0 BC until the Arabs brought in Islam after 641 AD. So these people didn't come down with Islam, so it's going to be recent. It's long older than that. They didn't come down with Christianity, so they ought to be older than that. They came back with the ancient Egyptian religion in certain aspects, in more aspects, and with a few Greek words that can only be explained by interaction. So I would date their departure to, of a large number of them, until maybe the Greeks were influential enough to transfer some words into Kalenjin language, and they brought that down with them, or up with them.
Okay, this is my real last question. Do you think, because you mentioned the fluctuation back and forth, that there were other African groups, homogeneous groups, who existed in ancient Egypt in ancient times, and whose culture and or lexicon has contributed, to the historical records in terms of what we know in the Meta-Neter script, and how does that play out in, identifying, or identifying aspects of culture? Because it seems like, for instance, like given the testimony that you have, like, the primary deity was Isis. But, another group may have had, another deity. Is this a way to tell if different groups were there? How does that work? If I'm making any kind of sense in my question.
Yeah, I know there are other groups that migrated from Egypt or to Egypt because it was, at one time it was a very influential part of Africa. So you end up going there. If it's the quote-unquote capital of Africa, people end up visiting the capital of science and wealth. You end up visiting there now and then. So there are people who speak languages that may relate to ancient Egyptian in other places other than East Africa. Like in West Africa, you've seen the works of Sheikh Anta Diop, how he has proven that Wolof, or one of the West African languages, has some relation with ancient Egyptian. I think Teofilo Benga has come up with others too. So it was a commerce exchange with the entire rest of Africa, and therefore it's not only Kalenjin that was manifested there. There may have been other groups even in Egypt. Like in Kenya now, we see one country has many language groups. So Egypt did not have only a single language group, although the ancient Egyptian one, which was recorded, which now looks like Kalenjin, has a lot of Kalenjin behavior and vocabulary, but it certainly had other languages which were up at the top one time or other and down at other times. And in East Africa, we have other languages, other people too, like the Ogiek. They are the aborigines of East Africa. The word Ogiek means aborigines, the original peoples. And their original language is Kalenjin, another form of Kalenjin, slightly different from the Kalenjin we speak now, but it's still Kalenjin, and it's the same ancient Egyptian language. So when the ancient Egyptians left from East Africa or any other part of Africa, but the ones of East Africa, the big influential part of them that gave birth to Coptic and ancient Egyptian languages that we see, the Ogiek spoke that language. So the aborigines of East Africa spoke that language. So when they went to Egypt, they took that language with them. And it became very influential. There may have been other languages, but ancient Egyptian benefited a lot from an Eastern African type of ancient language, proto-language.
Well, is there anything that, I didn't ask that you would want the public to know in terms of, certain major aspects of the Kalenjiin relationship to the ancient Egyptians specifically?
Now that I can remember, I think you have covered most of it. I must really credit you. You've really read my books, and and you've read other books, and you asked relevant questions, and it's difficult to think of something right now, maybe later, but right now that you may have left out. That is very important, but I think we have touched the most important areas.
All right. Well, once again, I appreciate you taking your time out to, talk with me and in the public about this, your very important works. And so I'm always constantly recommending your work to others. And so, I anticipate, I highly anticipate your upcoming work on the military clan. And I just want to say, continue doing, and sharing, your information. And so it's rare that we get such insights in the English speaking, world. And so most people in America can't read French. And so, a lot of texts are written in the French, but this is a blessing to have these two works. And I know you have some DVDs as well, doing some explanations. And so if the people want to get in contact with you or to get a hold of your works, where should they go?
They should go. Thank you very much for appreciating my work and for spreading the word. We have a website. There's a website, www.rediscoverafrica.net. Rediscover Africa is one long word. www.rediscoverafrica.net. That is where you'll find some of my books, some of my ideas, and those where to get those DVDs you're talking about. Download some of them or buy the DVDs themselves there, and I'll see the correspondence, I'll see the patches, and I'll make sure a copy of whatever you've ordered is sent to you.
Well, we see you kind of in the background. What we see in the background, it looks like a radio/media center. And I know you have a radio program. And so can you tell us a little bit about that as well?
We have a Kalenjiin radio station here, also TV station. Some shows are hybrids, radio and TV, like what we have just done with you is like radio and TV type of show. Behind me, we have a TV studio. All these are Kalenjiin based. We run shows in Kalenjiin and trying to encourage the Kalenjiin people to appreciate themselves and to let them know that their language can be used, they can be intellectualized and be used to cover even very sophisticated areas and make them proud of their own language, and probably in future go back to it and promote it, and probably they'll regain their previous pride of place. So that's what we try to do here. And one of my big shows used to be Kagib, which is another word for Egypt, Kagib, which says also our ancient home, Kagib. And people liked to hear that because I was telling with a few more facts what they had from their childhood. So we promote a lot of things, try to regain pride in ourselves.
Yeah, I have a linguistic book on college and language, but not necessarily a language speaking with or to teach you how to learn the language. But I've gotten to hear it a little bit through your YouTube, some of the YouTube clips that you have. And so, I got to remind folks that you really do have to understand the college and language, to, really listen to the show. But if you want to hear it, at least, and get some kind of semblance of possibly how the ancient Egyptian might have sounded, I encourage you to, look at some Kalenjiin videos, online, and if you can get a grammar like I have, but if you want to look at it linguistically, in real detail, I would recommend it. But again, I thank you 1,000 times for taking time out of your busy day and for answering questions regarding your work and your culture. And so thank you again. Appreciate your time, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm glad to see you and to have met you and to see the direction you're going. You're going the right direction. As I get older, I would like to be succeeded by others, and I think you're one of them. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. I hope